My name is Katherine Izenour. I'm a PhD student at Auburn University in Auburn, Alabama, in the United States. I'm currently working on blood pathogens that can be passed from domestic animals to humans in Egypt. I spent about 7 months working out of Cairo University's Veterinary School in Cairo, Egypt, as a Fulbright Fellow.
We're interviewing scientists, pioneers, and Bento Lab users that are pushing the boundary of accessible biotechnology. Today, I'm talking to Katherine Izenour from Auburn University, who has been studying zoonotic transmission in Cairo, Egypt. This video is brought to you by Bento Lab, a DNA analysis laboratory you can take anywhere.
My background is mostly in public health. I'm an epidemiologist, and so for almost 10 years I worked in the government here in the United States in a number of public health and epidemiology roles. And it was never my thing, and I've always really loved animals, and the more I got to travel and the more I worked in public health, the more interested I became in the human-animal interface. And it was on a trip to Petra when I just really thought to myself, there's got to be a better way to keep animals healthy, especially the domestic ones that live in close proximity to humans, and treat them well as a means of improving human health. And so over a period of time, I sort of was chewing on this idea of how can I pivot my career to do something that was more in the human-animal public health space. And so I had an opportunity to take a couple months off from my job, and I went to Egypt and volunteered at a dog and cat shelter. And then I went to India for 2 weeks, volunteered at a wildlife rescue. That was when I decided I was going to quit my job and go back to school and pursue a PhD in some sort of human-animal public health infectious disease space. I didn't really know what it was going to look like. Of course, like most people, I think, who do research, you have a lot of hopes and dreams that get crushed repeatedly, and there's a lot of pivoting and changing and, just figuring it out. So I went from originally planning a project on tuberculosis in Indian sloth bears to looking at infectious or bloodborne parasites of domestic animals in Egypt. And I've just always really, really loved the Middle East. The Middle East and North Africa, I just think it's such a fascinating culture and religion. There's so much history there. And so, I started Googling and trying to figure out how to do a project there. Who could I collaborate with? And there is a veterinary school at Cairo University. And I made contact just by sending an email to a professor there, wanting to know if he was interested in collaborating on a not very well defined project looking at some zoonotic blood pathogens that can pass from domestic animals to humans. And he was game. And so I just sort of started putting it together from there. It was very organic and just happened.
Katie, can you tell me a bit more about the science that you're using?
So I have collected blood samples from a variety of domestic animals in Cairo. So domestic animals would be animals that live with and around humans. So dogs, cats, horses, donkeys, sheep, goats, really any type of animal that you might have in your house or at a local farm. And I'm taking this blood and I'm going to do some laboratory work on it to pull the DNA out of it and look for 7 particular pathogens that can be passed from these animals to humans. And so this is called zoonotic transmission, when a pathogen that causes disease or illness can pass from an animal to a human. And I'm interested in these because I think that the relationship between animal health and human health is so critical, because we live with animals are around us, we eat animals, and I think keeping animals healthy is a key to keeping humans healthy.
What kind of animals are you studying in particular for this project?
Yeah, great question. So I got really lucky at Cairo University's Veterinary School. They have a clinic that sees all types of animals, and so I was able to collect samples from dogs, cats, cows, water buffalo, sheep, goats, and I believe we also sampled a camel. So I got quite a variety of animals, luckily.
Could you tell me a bit more about some of the challenges that you've been experiencing?
Yes, that is actually my favorite question, because I think it's easy to believe that research is glamorous and smooth and takes place in these pristine laboratories and, there's plentiful resources. But I think everyone needs to have an appreciation for the difficulty of field work. Even if you're in the United States or England, field work is just really difficult. Things break, things go wrong. You get to the field and realize you forgot something. And then that's just magnified by a lot when you're talking about traveling to a foreign country. And so I certainly faced challenges, but I'd like to acknowledge to all other scientists out there fighting the good fight that we all experience challenges, and I certainly don't think mine are the worst or particularly unique. But I think one of the things that was the most challenging was supply chain and trying to get supplies that either I couldn't bring with me, for example, 100% ethanol, which was something I needed for DNA extractions. And there was just no way I was going to be able to bring it on the airplane. And so I had planned to buy it in country, and it took me weeks to find ethanol in country in Egypt. And when I did finally find it, it was available in very limited supplies from one supplier, and they were only open on certain days of the week. And you had to walk up 6 flights of stairs to get to them. I mean, it was just all the things. And so that's one example. And then of course, I had a couple equipment issues, and just trying to get things shipped into country and get them through customs was challenging as well. I mean, some of my materials spent up to 6 weeks sitting in customs, waiting for clearance. And in some cases I did have to pay taxes on items, which, at that point, I'm in Egypt, like whatever, what's a little more money? And so it wasn't even just the supply, but things that were actually available. For example, Kyogen Master Mix and Kyogen extraction kits, which I use in the United States. And I was very excited to learn that there was a Kyogen distributor in Egypt. But just the markup on these items was pretty substantial. So it really changed the cost of my work by some of these supply issues I was handling. And the volumes that I was used to having available in the United States were just not available in Egypt. In the United States, I just go on the computer, push a few buttons, and you can order gallons of Master Mix if you feel like it. But in Egypt, I could get like one box of like 4 tubes. And then, they would have to order more from Germany, and it could take 2 to 3 months to come in. And so, yeah, I think for me, supply chain was probably the most surprising, because, it was Egypt. It's not like I was in the jungle on a side of a mountain, someplace where I would need a carrier pigeon to fly me materials. I just really underestimated how difficult supply would be. Yeah, and it definitely got the best of me some days.
What have you enjoyed the most? So we talked about challenges, but what have you found most rewarding about the project so far?
So I think when I was in country, the most rewarding part was getting to interact with the animal owners who would come into the clinic. I was fortunate enough to get some medication donations from pharmaceutical companies, so I was able to take flea and tick preventative with me and deworming that I was giving out for free to the animal owners. And they were so appreciative, and it was just so great to see them wanting to learn how to take better care of their animals, wanting to know more about treatment options, and just wanting to be good stewards of their animals, which you don't see everywhere, and even in Egypt, you don't see that a ton, depending on where you are. And so it was a really cool experience to see so much positive human-animal interaction in a place that's maybe not known for that. And that was like the one thing that I felt like I was really able to give back and have an impact on was handing out some of this donated flea and tick prevention and deworming. And then I think personally, I was just really proud of myself because, I mean, it was hard being in a foreign country where I don't really speak the language, and I had to get around on my own and figure out how to communicate and, figure out how to do life. And some days were really hard, but, looking back, I am actually pretty proud of how much I was able to do and how successful I was able to, interact in my environment and make friends and, meet my neighbors and work with my community trap, neuter, release group on spaying and neutering some of the stray dogs and cats in the neighborhood. Some days were hard, some days were scary, some days were just really tough. And, kind of looking back and just feeling like I grew a lot personally during my time there was super rewarding as well.
So Katie, you gave your Bento Lab a nickname. Why? How did you come up with that name?
Yes, I did name my Bento Lab. So I was very excited to receive him after much waiting and anticipation, since he spent some time in customs jail in Egypt. And so I named him Bobby the Bento Box, mostly because I really like repetition and alliteration. And it just seemed like kind of a cute name. He just seemed like a little Bobby to me. So he was very well received and eagerly celebrated when he finally made his self known in Egypt. And actually the students and the professors at Cairo University were very intrigued by him, and had lots of questions about how it works and how it's so little. And I think the funniest thing is when they would see me pull it out of my backpack and they were just like, what? It was great. It never stopped being fantastic. So yes, Bobby the Bento.
Oh, brilliant. That's actually a trick that we do as well in terms of the backpack. And I particularly liked the time we went through an airport, I think it was in the US, and met someone that had studied PCR. One of the security guards was like, oh, I'm doing forensics. And that was really cool.
He actually has his own drawer in our lab here in the United States with his little name tag that says Bobby the Bento on it. And Dr. Zodi has a bento, and I think she named hers Betty the Bento. So we have Bobby and Betty.
No way! Oh my gosh!
Oh, yeah.
That's very cute. That's like Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head.
I know.
Katie, if people wanted to find out more about you and your work, how would they follow you?
Yeah, people are more than welcome to follow my work as well as the work of my colleagues in the Disease Ecology and Evolution in the Tropics lab page at Auburn University.
You can find out more about Katie's work in the description below, and if you have any questions for Katie, please leave her a comment. If you liked this video, give us a thumbs up, and please support us by subscribing. Thank you, and see you next week.